What is up, YouTube? It's Josh. This is the Den of Nerds. This is the Den of Nerds podcast. This is the second episode. I'm sitting down with writer Keith Crook. Keith, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going
Thanks
well.
for having me.
Not a problem. Thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to this. I think you guys are going to find this talk fascinating. Keith is a writer. He's actually the writer and creator of Night Wasp, which is kickstarting right now. I'm going to put a link to that Kickstarter in the description of this video. Go check this book out. And I think that after you listen to this conversation, you're definitely going to want to go check this book out. So make sure you do that. I always start out these podcasts with the same questions, Keith, so I'm going to hit you with these. So obviously, I don't know you very well. We literally just spoke for the first time today, but...
Well, I'm pretty shallow, so I think you know all there is to know about me.
Yeah, so I could sum you up. But basically, man, you love comics and cartooning in general. Like that's obvious from the research I did.
I do. I have ever since I was a little kid.
So what is it about? Like, what is it about comics?
Well, my father was a political cartoonist for Newsday on Long Island.
Oh, wow.
And so I always grew up with a sketchbook, and I was always drawing. He wasn't into comic books, but my brother used to bring comic books home, like in the late '60s. So this is way back.
Right.
If we had these comic books, it'd be worth a lot of money. The like Spider-Man's about when John Romita Sr. There's a junior.
Right.
When he started turning it into sort of a soap opera.
Yes.
As opposed to the DCs that were going on at the same time, which were more like evergreen stories, where Superboy grows, a third leg, one issue, and the next issue, everything's back to normal.
Yeah.
It's like it happened. But did that answer the question, or am I just going off on a complete tangent?
It answers the question and answers
and more.
the introduction. And more.
And brings up many questions.
Absolutely. So your dad was a political cartoonist?
Yes, he was. He was very modest political cartoonist, because I was going through a bunch of his old cartoons, and I found a letter that he'd been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize.
Oh, wow.
And that would be, if I was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, you'd have to address me as Keith, guy who has been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, Crook.
Right.
But that was one of he's. So yes, he was a political cartoonist. He met a bunch of presidents. He took me to the White House. I met Gerald Ford. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I kind of came out on the short end of the stick.
Of the presidential stick, right?
My brother met Johnson. He met Nixon.
Oh, wow.
And I got the only president who was never elected.
Right. No, that's kind of cool though, man. I gotta be honest. That must have been an interesting environment. Did that kind of affect kind of how he raised you or whatever? Could you see that kind of?
I met growing up, all his friends were cartoonists, and I guess in some homes, drawing would be discouraged. I ended up going to Pratt for 2 years.
Okay.
I wanted to draw Spider-Man. I wanted to draw comic books.
Right.
Up until when I got to Pratt, it was an art school that was more fine artsy, and people kind of poo-pooed comic books.
Oh, wow.
And it was also it was 77, 78. It was a great time to be in New York. Anyway, for whatever reason, either the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or I ended up dropping out of art school, which doesn't put me in bad company.
No, sure.
John Lennon, Keith Richards.
So you've seen this culture, this geek culture, change a lot.
Being a geek when I was a geek was, you were a pariah. Now you can go to a Comic-Con and get laid.
Right. I know, right?
It's like there's stardom in geekdom.
It's true.
Inside that community, it's like, wow. Before it just, the only time geeks would come together would be for Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. No, absolutely. It's one of the things I touched on with Kat when I had her on for the first podcast. I was like, it's so crazy to me, because even in the time when I was young, it was just not as accepted, and now whole families go to Comic-Cons dressed up, and it's just, the whole culture has gotten to a much more acceptable place. It's and
this is, we talked about political correctness. I think it was before we started.
Yeah.
This gets to I almost miss a little bit of the edgy like dirtier when it was not something that was so. It was cleaned up for like family entertainment.
Yes, yes, the Disney effect, if you will.
Okay, there, perfect.
Yeah.
It's like what happened to Times Square. Times Square went from being a place that was like, your eyes would light up. It would be like something amazing, and now it's
Sure.
sort of just it's like a mall. It's like
Right. No, no, I get that sentiment a lot. What's funny is Scott Snyder talks a lot about that too. The change in general. Like that used to be a place where you could go on adventures, and it was really, Times Square was really different.
like Taxi Driver Times Square.
Yeah, but the thing is, for a lot of younger comic book fans, and just younger people in general, like they don't understand that or whatever. They can't see it as that. It's always been that way where let's go take pictures, and there's the huge, there's the Toys R Us there, and there's everything's kind of fluffy but
it's become really. There's like it's become very very. I don't want to say commercialized. It's more than that. It's become so organized, and it's
Right.
become too organized. That there's the Comic Con in Baltimore is the same as the one in Philadelphia. It's the same as the one in going down to Albany. Like the small, they just go from place to place to place. And I'm not talking about artists. I'm talking about they have like big organizations inside.
No. Yeah, it's become commercial for sure. I mean, that's I think we're getting to the nitty gritty. We're basically just getting to exactly what I wanted to talk about. But underground comics, man, underground comics.
Yes.
So this is so interesting to me. So when I was doing my research, for this interview, the interview that you did on Comic Frontline was really cool, and I remember.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, it was really interesting, and I liked learning about the underground comics. I had always known that those things exist. I went to school for fine arts, and so, I saw all the really weird animations that even Disney was putting out, in times of World War II and prior, and just stuff that wouldn't fly today. But then when I saw some of the stuff that you were talking about, you could just explain to everybody like what underground comics were. Educate these young kids, man.
Okay, well, underground comics were countercultural comic books done by people like R. Crumb and we brought up Captain Guts before. I'm trying to remember his name, who did Captain Guts. He does a lot of stuff. I'll look it up. It was they're very very edgy. They're cheaply done.
Right.
Compared to the comic books at the time.
Right.
In the '60s, like DC and Marvel. There's a lot of pornography. I guess now we'd call it pornography.
Right.
And misogyny, and it was very political. It was very in tune with the counterculture.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff with hippies, the struggle between, the youth culture of the '60s and Nixon's moral majority, the silent majority, excuse me.
Right.
And that was White Man. We talked about White Man.
Yeah, no, I looked up White Man. I read a lot of the strips, and I looked at what the overall, his
White Man beats Bigfoot. That was my favorite.
Yeah, well, doesn't he go like learn from a Yeti and become like kind of a pseudo hippie at the end of the day?
He leaves his family. He leaves his family for Bigfoot.
Yeah, he leaves everything for that. But it's so funny. Like one of the things, like as I was looking at it, because everybody has a different opinion of this thing. So one of the best recaps of White Man was that if he had a power, it was the power to have a tight asshole in all situations and just, what I mean, like puff up his chest and act like the white man, of the day or whatever. And I found it really interesting, man. White Man in particular, it reminded me of a couple of different things. A lot of relevant. We were talking before we started recording about just the political correctness of the day and everything like that. One of the things that it reminded me of is this Nietzsche quote where he talks about how religion made mankind a sick animal because a lot of the things that we naturally want to do, there's this thing in our mind that's telling us it's wrong, and in his eyes it was religion that was telling us that. And then,
religion is it's a meme. It's not genetic.
Right.
So Nietzsche be talking about something that's cultural.
Sure.
Cultural religion, and actually, I'm not. I actually believe. You just. It's the first time I heard that, but I think that I would have said it differently, and I probably would have said it trying to make it sound funny. coming out of a Night Wasp now.
Right.
But
No,
I do,
absolutely.
but that's stuff that I think about, and I mean, I mentioned the Abrahamic face in the first issue. The battle between the fact-based and the faith-based community
Right.
in the world is something that concerns me a lot, and that filters into my writing with Night Wasp. I mean, it's you can look at Night Wasp and say, oh, it's like Batman and Robin. It's a parody of Batman and Robin. I mean, the structure of the rich superhero, and the dilettante, and then he takes in the sidekick, and that works at that level. But everything that concerns me ends up becoming a part of the humor.
No, absolutely, and that's one of the things I dug about. When I sat down, I first read the book. I really liked the book and the humor.
Thank
and
you.
Some of these elements, like, see, I think because I did the video for the Kickstarter or whatever. When I sat down,
That was great. I liked it.
oh, thanks, man. Yeah. One of the things that I literally put in there, and I kind of was talking to Sean about, was, there are some pop culturally relevant things that have notes of this similar types of humor, like Archer and One Punch Man and some of these other things out there. And I think they all might come from a similar place, from that first like avant-garde way of doing comics and that type of stuff. Do you think that that some of this stuff though is kind of important to have out there? I mean, do you think there's something to be said?
I'm not just in terms of my comic. We had talked about I think earlier that what the volumes of sales that a successful comic book generates, say like 100,000 a month or something. I'm not really. I'm like the Ward Woodcock character in my comic book, that I'm a man on a mission, and it's not to make money. I want to create a comic book that I think is funny, and so I don't really I had mentioned that I was going for a very small audience.
Right.
I'm not necessarily going for a small audience, but I don't want. My dream isn't to have 170 million of the 330 million people reading Night Wasp every month. I want people who are really engaged.
Sure.
Really like it,
well, what do
really
you think about if some people were to look at some of the humor in the book and then look at some of your influences, and what would you say to some of these people that are like, well, this is too racy or non-politically correct?
Well, I mean, it's not politically correct, but I don't think there's different subcategories of politically incorrect, and race is one of them. I don't think that I'm politically incorrect in a racist way. I do make there's a line about Muslims are called muzzies in one of the cartoons,
right?
And I know that people were upset about that. I actually heard it. I think Peter Griffin said on the Family Guy, and that's where I got it from.
Sure.
And the character who said it is a bad guy, and he's somebody like White Man.
Right.
He's a real. He's got a bug up his ass. He's a police captain. This is something that one of these insensitive people would say. So, but people just saw it in the cartoon, and they weren't looking at the whole book. I think over 22 to 28 pages, you might get a better idea that it's ironic.
Sure.
Whereas the cartoons, which I did the cartoons after the first 5 issues, and it was harder to write one cartoon than it was to do 22 pages.
Right.
Because you want to move the story along, not give too much away, but you're teasing the character, and you want to get some jokes in. But you want to pull the story, and you want to have a little cliffhanger at the end of each, and then it was not something that I would have to do for 22 pages.
Sure. So I mean, basically, I guess your answer would kind of be that it's contextual. You know what I mean, and that it's not that the book itself is trying to do these things in a negative way. It's just that's
I sort of went off on a tangent, but your point was about people seeing this and a visceral reaction that it's in some way making a point that it's not making, because if anything, I'm making the opposite point.
Sure.
People don't have enough of a context for looking at one page. They don't have enough of a context to realize, oh, like I mentioned, I gave the Stephen Colbert example.
Correct.
He's not he is not that much of a conservative zealot. He's a liberal playing a conservative, and that's and I'm not actually. I mean, there's a lot more going on in Night Wasp than it's not. It's a comic book parody. It's not a political satire, although politics is satire.
Sure.
In the comic book.
No, and I think it's I think honestly, in my opinion, I think it's something that, especially considering like that you want people to kind of be engaged in that kind of storytelling. That's like where your history's from. I don't think it's something to shy away from. Like, I don't think, like, to me, there are notes in there that are un-PC, and that's friggin' okay. Like, that's part of the flavor. Just like Family Guy, you know what I mean? Just like some of these other things that people like, and they might chuckle at it and say that's pretty terrible, but they still laugh or whatever.
I think Family Guy is more politically incorrect.
Oh,
because
way more.
I object to Cleveland because I watch it. My son watches Family Guy all the time. I look at Cleveland like that's not a black actor doing that voice.
Right.
And it's like and he's just like a white guy that was colored in black. And then every so often they'll do a couple throwaway gags about the color of his skin. But I'm just sort of like it rubbed me the wrong way.
Right.
And so I was and Ferret Lad is Night Wasp sidekick, and he's a black kid. Actually, it's not a kid; he's 40.
Right.
He's been doing this for a long time. But so and I want to be funny, but I'm very careful about I like 3 or 4 times I've gone back and changed his dialogue because of he's from the hood. I want this to sound authentic, but on the other hand, I don't want to sound. I'm a white writer,
right?
And it's like sort of offensive for me to try to I listen. I listen to a lot of NWA and Ice Cube. I like the old '90s rap.
Sure.
But I haven't listened. But I don't really like the recent stuff. My point is, if you look at his dialogue, you'll go like, wait a minute. How many times did you listen to that? To that Ice Cube album or something? Because I listen to that for dialogue. So, and a lot of times I'll take stuff out because I think this might people. I'm not racist, but people might read this as racist. That's why I think with the Muslims and in the cartoon, there's the police and Night Wasp think there are Iranians running loose in the city.
Right.
And immediately that means that there's going to be a terrorist attack.
Right.
Which I'm not going to give away the whole thing, but the punch as a writer, I always write the gag, and then I write everything backwards.
Right.
So the gag, it's not Iranians, and they all learn a lesson about judging people. But you're not going to get there at the rate that we're going. It's going to be a lot of it's going to be a lot of months and a lot of strips before you actually see these guys are jerks.
Right. No, yeah, I get it. I think too a lot of it has to do with timing too. It's an interesting topic, but I don't think that it's. I personally think that it's a good flavor. That there's something It's both ballsy and just like it makes sense for the characters and the situation. Like I really and thoroughly enjoyed the first issue, and the mini comics. I think that your influences as a writer, if you just take a broad look at it, it makes more sense than if you try to just get a reaction, if you're going to be reactionary.
Right. Plus, the first story arc is from a screenplay that I originally wrote in like 1992, and it's got the structure of something that was you try to written to film. Right. Whereas what I've been writing since, then I did the cartoons and I did the short piece. Now it's getting and the scripts that I've written for the next storyline. I'm not saying it's more underground comic-y.
Okay.
Because I'm not because now I'm like, you know what? Hey, I'm just doing this for comic fans. I'm not trying to sell this to Hollywood.
Sure.
I wanted to, so I can be even more free with where I go and what I do, because I don't have to think of like somebody in a Hollywood boardroom going, oh my God, we could never have that happen, or I could never film that or whatnot. It's like, this is a comic book. This is, like, don't be constrained to another medium.
No, for sure. I think that that's going to end up being good. Just in that interview, some of the stuff that you talked about for the future of the character, I was like, that sounds freaking awesome. Like, I
have a lot of ideas of where it's going to go.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me to a thing. What is the future of Night Wasp? Or let's backtrack a little bit. What if people don't even know what Night Wasp is? How would you describe it to people?
Well, he's a superhero parody along the lines of, like, if you saw Batman in the 60s, that show.
Right.
But he's also, this is sort of like an elevator pitch, and I was about to go off on 18 minutes about Yukio Mishima and how that it sort of that was the model for the early Night Wasp. It's a cartoon parody. It's funny, and it pokes fun at a lot of things that, like religion and stuff, that aren't normally made fun of in mass market media.
Sure. No, absolutely. And like I said, I totally dig it. I think we're saying basically in so many words, if you're really, really sensitive, it might not be the book for you.
Well, I don't want to give away the story, but one of the supervillains in the first comic is Narcissus.
Yes. From
Greek mythology. So that when the police come and Narcissus is there, they have an existential crisis because, wait a minute, if there's a Greek god in the museum, that means that, all the Abrahamic faiths are crap, and that, no more Christmas, no more so-and-so, and so they're so weirded out by the fact that their belief system is wrong, that they have to call Night Wasp.
Right, and I love that part too. It's pretty.
So I don't think that I don't make fun of, like, Christianity per se. I say all the Abrahamic faiths, so that they can always think, well, he really doesn't mean us Muslims. He really doesn't mean us Jews. He really doesn't mean us Christians.
No, for sure. And I think that if that kind of stuff, like, there are people out there that, like, they're into that sort of stuff. So I think those are the kind of people that should definitely check this book out. Like I said, I highly recommend.
Yeah, if you like Neil deGrasse Tyson and you like comic books, then hopefully you'll like this.
Yes, well put. And I think that, by the way, that's an excellent elevator pitch, by the way.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about you a little bit, man. So, one of the things also, a lot of people in indie comics, and this is the question, by the way, that I was talking about earlier when I said it was linked to our prior discussion, but basically I think a lot of these people creating books right now, they don't have a lot of experience, like, in mediums of writing or cartooning or life experience in general, but that's definitely not the case for you. So basically, like, how did you cut your teeth as a writer? You want to tell the people a little bit about how you have been writing for a long time?
Okay, sure. I moved to LA in '92 to try to make it as a screenwriter, and I ended up working at Ogilvy, a major advertising agency, just as an assistant in the creative department, because most people move to LA to work in the industry and working somewhere else. Right. And then I started to get into advertising copywriting, and I worked with the Eisner Award winner, Scott Shaw, who's a friend of mine. He was my art director partner. I worked on some Pebble cereal spots. And I still try to get into the screenplay thing. I had a movie about Joe Pepitone, a biopic that was optioned, and but after 4 years, I just got sick of LA, and I came back and I started writing for MTV Sports. Right. Some people might be old enough to remember Rock and Jock basketball and baseball. All those funny lines, they really didn't make them up. They had people like me on cue cards.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because they wouldn't memorize their scripts, so we had to sit there and write it all down on a cue card at the very end. Right. So I worked at MTV, and I got back into advertising. I ended up at American Express, where I created an in-house advertising agency, and eventually I went out on my own and got as a vendor. I had my own ad agency, which closed a couple of years ago, and I'm in a position now that I'm sort of like Ward Woodcock. This is my Night Wasp. This is my being a superhero, writing a superhero comic. I don't really need to. I can work on something that I'm passionate about, and I don't have to worry about selling 100,000 copies.
Right. Right. So the thing that I'm hearing a couple different things. So basically, one, that you might not necessarily need it to be successful because you're at that point in your life.
I don't need to sell 100 copies, 100,000 copies. I just want to. I want to get a Pulitzer nomination like my father.
Oh yeah,
You know?
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, in the comic, look, if Bob Dylan got one. No, he got it. Did he get? He got a Pulitzer, right? It wasn't a Nobel Prize.
Actually,
yes.
Yeah, Dylan actually just got a Nobel Prize, I believe.
He got the Nobel. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take that then. I'll take that.
Yeah, I'll take that. Just modestly get the Nobel.
This way, I won't have to argue with my father at Christmas about what's more impressive, Pulitzer nomination or a Nobel.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That's how so you were pretty much writing the whole time then. When you were working at these agencies, a lot of that had to do with writing. Is that?
Yeah, but writing, like at American Express, if you've got an article, if you've got a direct mail piece for like Blue Cash, or the Open Business Network or something, telling you about how your rate has never been better if you sign up now.
Right.
That is the kind of stuff that I was writing.
Gotcha.
It was, serial commercial. It was not something that was as fulfilling as you might think.
Right.
I mean, I missed the age of Mad Men by about 10, 15 years.
Oh man, what a bummer.
So, yeah. So the work itself had to be enriching, and it was kind of, it pays well, but it's really pretty boring.
Right. Were you writing stuff on the side kind of during that, or?
I stopped writing in 2002. I was doing stuff on the side, like, trying to sell some screenplays. When my son was born in 2002, I didn't really have the time to do my own writing. And then about 2 years ago, I went back and I pulled out the old Night Wasp and a couple other scripts. And then I approached Scott Shaw about breaking Night Wasp down into a series of comic books.
And how was that?
It was fine. We used to work together.
Right.
I just I learned a lot from him when I was at Ogilvy, and and it was really interesting to give him the script and have him break it down and bring the gags to life.
No, that must have been fascinating for sure. So that was kind of because it's funny because like for my comic book too, I did something similar where I wrote it as a screenplay and then broke it down into comic issues. And I'm under the belief that it's not as easy as a transition as some people might think. And there's things that the comic book medium demands that the screenplay and the cinema world does not. So I don't know. For me, it's pretty interesting.
I think that a comic book is more liberating as a writer because you can control. First there's no. Well, I mean, they do have movies with narration, but the internal monologue you can't show thoughts, and you can't jump around as quickly as you would with a film.
Sure.
It become very confusing. Although I have to say, and this is something I had mentioned I think before we started, how when Gwen Stacy died back, I think it was in the 70s, I stopped reading comic books for a long time. I was so upset. It was like comic book 9/11. It was. I was so, and I looked at. So when I started getting comic books again, actually when I was working at Ogilvy, Scott used to buy me comic books to get me back into it. That was around Spider-Man 390, 400,
yeah.
And I looked at the comic books at the time. They were doing 4 different Spider-Man titles a month in the same continuity. So each issue, it would have like Spider-Man, on the roof, crawling into his apartment. They would have him in bed for 4 pages. Then he'd get a phone call for 4. It was so slow, and there was so little dialogue. And then I looked at a Steve Ditko. I think it might have been the first one with the lizard. And you look at like page 4. There's like 16 different panels, and they take place in 5 different cities.
Wow.
It jumps with the story, and the entire issue takes like over 6 months of Spider-Man's life.
Oh wow.
as opposed to like 6 minutes, in some of these issues, because when you're doing, it's really hard to tie together that much continuity.
No, it's true. It's true. I've seen that just in general, like comics have changed a lot, but there are some principles that still, stay strong and have lasted the test of time. But I think there's a serious problem with, and I kind of talked to Kat about this too, and it's just kind of my thing lately. I talk to people about it, but the comic book industry itself is suffering from a lot of different elements, and a lot of these books, it's funny when you're talking about it's slow and there's a lot of space and it just happens and all that stuff. Like I was reading,
they're beautiful. I mean, God, they're so much prettier than they were 30, 40 years ago. But
it's true, but there's not, I don't know if the stories are as tight, and I think there's a lot to that. But for me personally, I can't force myself to like a comic. Like I'm not gonna read a comic just so I can stay in the know of continuity. You know what I mean?
It's also, I mean, as you've read a lot of comics, and then you pick up a new title, if it's too much like something that you're used to, it won't register. But if it's too different from what you're used to, that can be off-putting too. So
yeah, that's true.
You have to find a sweet spot of like migrating from what people like.
Oh, for sure.
Not so much to you don't want to be a clone, but it just you can't reinvent the wheel.
It's true.
People don't want that.
I guess that's true. That's kind of part of the problem too. It does have certain things that you have to just adhere to, otherwise it's going to be too weird. It's going to be, at some points it might not even be a comic if it goes that sort of way.
But what I'm doing could almost be, somebody could look at it and see the page and go, wow, look at this, he's got these narration boxes. Whoever thought of that? And they're like things like thought balloons. Do people? I've been looking around these modern comics, and a lot of the conventions seem to be, dying out. And then put colors around the dialogue boxes of different speakers so that you can follow who's talking, rather than just have a line down to the talker. They just put colors, and stuff. It's just, I guess it's what you're used to.
Well, a lot of that I think started with some early Frank Miller stuff, and I guess the thought bubble itself is almost dead in modern comics. People don't really utilize that anymore. It's like it's caption boxes, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's for writing comedy, it's so great.
No, I know, and that's one of the things. Like it feels almost nostalgic. I think that for modern readers or whatever, you can get some vibes of just like I want to almost say like Mad Magazine. You know what I mean? With some of the ways that they would do some of their humor. And stuff.
I love I love Mad Magazine. So you asked, I touched on, or you asked me earlier about like things. I guess it was just the underground comic, but I was inspired also by Mad Magazine, the National Lampoon. Yeah. In terms of print media.
No, I mean, and I think all of that stuff comes through. So, like if obviously people are fans of that sort of stuff, they'll get that flavor on in there. But I wanted to ask you too about Short Fuse and how basically you met up with those guys and how that partnership started.
Well, before Short Fuse, I was trying to put this all together myself, hiring artists around the world through, it wasn't freelance.com, it was another site. And it was not going that well. I'd hire somebody from Brazil, and then I'd send them Scott stuff, and they wouldn't get it. Then I'd send them the script, and then they would put it into Google Translate, and then they would have Night Wasp carrying a duck for some reason, and I have to sit there and try to explain to the person, no duck, no duck on Night Wasp. That's no, and it was, and then the colorists there kept being all these superstorms in the Philippines, and my colors kept getting washed to sea.
Oh,
so
wow.
All of a sudden I'd be like on page 16, and then my colors would disappear, and then I have to try to find somebody, who could finish the color. And it was like, anyway. So I had done a couple issues, and I was really unhappy with the way they looked, and also the fact that they weren't visually coherent, the style. Because I had different people working on them. So I brought in, I met Sean, like online through I think freelance.com, and I gave him one issue to do, and I liked it so much. I said, you know what? Go back and do the earlier issues. Let's go back and do it. We'll do it. I want you guys to do the whole thing. We'll go back and this is going back to not really being. I'm not really concerned with how much money I make out of this. I just want it to be more or less, what I feel good with.
No, absolutely. And so, like, basically, and that's the one thing. So, did you reach out to Rashawn, or did he reach out to you?
I did. I reached out to him to work on the next issue, and after I saw it, I said, you know what? I looked what they were working on. I'm like, damn it! Now I have to burn all the stuff I did before because I want you guys to do everything. I don't want to have different artists on different issues. I don't want to have a different colorist. I don't want to have. It's got to all be uniform.
No, definitely. And I think that I obviously love those guys over there, and because they publish.
They've been great. They've been like absolutely great to work with.
Yeah, it's awesome. I the look of the book. The book looks so clean, and it's so funny. So like when I was doing the Kickstarter thing, like I made mention of the fact that Short Fuse is handling production, and that should bring a certain amount of confidence. And I really believe that. Like honestly, the fact that they're handling the production and I, from everything I've experienced with them, that should be a sign of confidence to people out there. Like these books are going to look great. You know what I mean?
Well, from me, the son of the guy who doesn't tell people that he's nominated for a Pulitzer, like every time he meets him.
Right.
I don't like to push myself, and I don't like to really publicize myself.
Right.
More than I should be more more comfortable with that elevator pitch, but I'm not. So these guys are fabulous with the marketing.
Yes.
And I'm a creative, and I really like when I'm spending a lot of time trying to set up something on social media and whatnot. I'd really much rather be, writing a story than doing that. And they do a great job. They've been fabulous. So.
No, yeah, it's pretty awesome that they have those tools and they're able to do that sort of thing. I think it definitely alleviates, like you said, man. At the end of the day, you just want to write these. You want to make these books.
Right.
And that's what it's about. So obviously, the Kickstarter is going on right now. So like, what has that experience been like for you? Because I know you're kind of hands off with it, but I mean, I'm sure you're watching.
Well, I'm gratified by all the money that we've taken for backers. I think I'm impressed with the process. Honestly, I mean, I could if I wanted to, I could just self-fund everything.
Right.
But I like the process. It means a lot to me that we get, that I get to meet all these people with, similar interests, and I've been in contact with other comic book creators, and we've been talking about, collaborating on things and whatnot. So this is what I do it, not to sell 100,000 issues.
Sure.
I want to be part of the community in that, and this marketing process is a part of that.
No, definitely. And what's one of the things that, like, when Rashawn and I talked about it, like, we were, pretty clear on the fact, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was more or less his idea to do the Kickstarter, and part of that has to do with just growing your brand as a comic book writer.
Exactly. It's brilliant. I all the power to him. He's all these different things that he's just opened up my eyes. And I was the guy working in advertising, and he's done a great job. And it makes me feel hopeful for the future of Night Wasp, because for me, the bottom line is I don't care if I get paid. I just want to pay for the printing. If I don't lose a lot of money,
absolutely,
and I want to get. If I could get 1,000 people who read each issue, I would be like, "Oh my God, that's fabulous!"
No, totally, and that's one of the things that's really cool about Short Fuse in general is just kind of how they go after people, or they find people, or they will let people in that have this pre-established fan base, and through like this shared love of comics and indie comics, they kind of build a community, right? And they're building this brand, and everybody's kind of buying in who comes in from these other little projects, and so like I'm pretty stoked to be a part of it too. And I think Night Wasp is an awesome addition And I'm
Thank
glad.
you.
Yeah, man, it's sweet. Like honestly, like, we have this kinship now because we're both, published, by them. We're both part of the Heroes Ignited thing. Actually, you won't see my character in the anthology because we actually signed our contract after that thing came out. And like, there's a lot going on with my book that like I can't talk about, and it's like it's being.
Otherwise, you'd have to shoot me.
Yeah, I'd have to shoot you, and throw my computer in the tub, and all that sort of stuff. So. That would be outrageous, but
well, I look forward to seeing it.
No, I think you'll dig it, man. It's I think you'll be able to just like when I could get a specific read on the flavor of storytelling that you like to do. I think you'll do the same when you check out my book, and you'll kind of see my influence. It's very gritty and dark and that sort of thing. So,
are your influences just from comics or
comics, pop culture, movies? Yeah, it's a hodgepodge. One of my buddies at Reddit said he loves all the pulp references. Like I was like raised on Tarantino films, and I love that kind of
I'm going to give you a writer to writer recommendation. Check out on Sirius, they have a Radio Classics network, and they have all the old noir spy stories and stuff, because it gives you such, the writing is so for radio. With the narration, it's very much sort of like the way comic books were written at the time.
Oh, wow.
Like back in the 30s and the 40s. And the storytelling is so, you only got like 20, 30 minutes.
Right.
So you've got to get the story across. And it's really, I think it'd be a great writing exercise to try to do like a Night Wasp radio serial.
Oh wow, that's a great
idea. Thought that'd be fun because I listened to all the Green Hornet and stuff like that, and I thought, and I used to love Firesign Theater.
Okay.
So they were so they would do these records. So the idea of doing something comedy that you would listen to, I think that Night Wasp would be doing like 10-minute little episodes would be a lot of fun.
Well, that's a great idea. That's something we might have to work on for sure, man. You should send me a link to that stuff so
I don't know how to monetize it the way comic books, but
yeah. I mean, even just to put it out there as like a little ancillary thing, or just kind of added content could be really cool for people too. I think that's one of the things that the industry in general needs to be able to do is to bring people in.
You think about the costs involved, and you could pretty much, you could do, the best radio show from 1938, just sitting in your office with your MacBook Pro.
It's true, and that's and a lot of people do that. I do the YouTube thing, and I hang out in those circles, and it is fascinating what some of these people have been able to do with just very modest amount of equipment, and just. They love these things, or they're into these things, and they go do it. Where back in the day, you'd have to go to school, get the job, get the apprenticeship, and really it was just completely different. So nowadays,
right.
They there's so many people doing YouTube at a really cool production value, talking about stuff that I want to hear about. There's almost so much out there that I honestly couldn't check it all out, even if I wanted to.
I think YouTube is like the stickiest source for video. Like going, because it's so subspecial. It's like I'm like teaching myself to play guitar.
Right.
So I go onto YouTube all the time, and I pull up lessons of song. I'll just put in the name of the song that I like and chords or a guitar lesson, and boom, one of the best teachers in the world will teach me how to do it.
I know, it's fascinating. I watch like lectures from very prestigious people that back in the day you'd have to.
People we mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson before. If you look at any of those shows on Netflix or whatnot, and you see these experts like on astronomy, I'm really into astronomy, and then you Google, you put them into the YouTube browser, you will pull up all these lectures in like Prague and whatnot, where these like these 2-hour lectures by these guys that are like absolutely, they're getting paid a lot of money for these lectures, so they're pretty entertaining.
No, for sure. It's actually YouTube is the most used search engine on the planet now. It's it surpassed Google. Yeah, technically Google owns it anyways, but it's the fastest, best way to absorb information, and a lot of that stuff is
and I'm
free.
still saying Google it through YouTube. which so they do have some branding problems.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. It's it's all the same. Honestly, if you Google it, you're gonna get search results, YouTube search results, anyways, in there. So it's like weird how all that works. But I want to finish up with a couple questions about craft, man. So
Yes, I like talking about craft.
So let's talk about that craft. So how do you approach your scripts? Like, how does the process unfold for you?
Well, like I said before, that I always write the joke last, and even when I'm not writing comedy, it's the same kind of concept. Like, like if you're doing Chinatown, you would have like the last scene in your mind about the relationships of the characters and how it's all gonna end, and then from that, I would work backwards. In a comic book context where I'm doing multiple stories, that's just one, because you have so many different storylines. That's the master storyline that ties all the issues together.
Right.
Because there'll be each character will have business that's going on, and it's not necessarily going to be resolved. It'll be somewhat resolved, but in the first 5 issues, there are a lot of things happen to Night Wasp that dictate where the whole series is going to go.
Right.
So, but I do have to at first I have to just come up with like 2 or 3 sentences, like what that next storyline is going to be about and how it's going to end, and then work backwards from there.
So you so you're like kind of a reductionist. Like you take the thing and then kind of break it down to see how we got there, sort of thing.
But then from that structure, because I'm writing comedy, I will, like what I'm doing, at the end of, in issue 6, Night Wasp beats a villain and has what is standard for him, his post victory press conference.
Nice.
Which which is sort of taken from sports. So after every game they have a press conference.
Yes.
So Night Wasp holds, which is for him a usual thing where he has to hold a press conference after everything.
Yep.
And he has in the back of the Wasp wagon he has a thing that he puts on the back with his logo and stuff like that, and he pulls it out, and he has a bottle of water, and he does it like an athlete. So that's something that just comes up as I'm writing.
Sure.
So I have to leave a lot of room to let the characters go off in the direction that they will, and then I need to have a little bit of a structure to bring me back, because by the end of this issue I know that Ward has to find out about X, and this has to happen and whatnot.
Right. And what kind of editorial stuff does Rashawn like look at stuff, or like how does the editorial process, like how many eyes do you put on it?
I usually just do it myself. This is just going back to the thing about me using the term muzzy.
Right.
My uncle is a master linguist, and he's converted to Islam. He converted in the 70s, and he lived in Tehran for a long time. He is an English professor, and he goes over my scripts to check them. And if he had thought that it was offensive, he would have believed me. He would have said something.
Right. So he
got it. I mean, because he used to, he was the one that introduced me to Mad Magazine, so he completely understood the irony and was not offended.
Sure. And that's kind of more from like a copy perspective. Do you have any?
Right.
Do you have anybody that looks over stuff for like for structure or?
You know what? This is and this is part of this process. I would really like to find people who like the comic. If I found people who liked it, and then and they saw stuff that maybe I didn't see and whatnot, or they or I said, wow, they definitely get it. They almost get it better than I do, and they made comments. Then I would like to be able to bounce stuff off in progress, off people,
sure.
Not necessarily like a focus group, but just to see what they thought, and if this was is this the way to handle that, or should I not even have him there and just do a narration box?
No, for sure. I always like to have other writers look at my stuff, and because it's so funny. Like just as an example, so I'm working on this science fiction Robin Hood book right now, and so I decided that I want the artist to actually co-own the IP, and that's for a number of different reasons. But one of the things, so when we're building this world together, it's not just me building it. And I find that like some of the stuff that like I'll try to do that's just way too crazy, like Steven will kind of talk me down on it, and then when I step back and look at the final product, I'm like, yeah, it's much better this way. Like it would have been too weird, to go that way. And so, in my opinion, I think it's always good to bounce ideas and, to be collaborative. Now, as far as the artist, like what kind of input do you get back on the art end, or is that just...
Well, because I engaged, I mean, I know who the artists are, but I engaged Short Fuse. So Sean has been my buffer, which is not necessarily that if I could have the artist come to my house and I could sit next to him,
right.
I mean, that would be perfect. But I mean, Sean has been the go-between with
right.
The pencils, the inks, the color, and I've been doing the lettering in Manga Pro, Manga Studio, because I used to work as an art director.
Right.
I was a writer, art director, and also because I'm constantly rewriting.
Sure.
I would get like I'm shot in the head by somebody doing the lettering because they would be so pissed off that. But when I look at the art, and it's like if I write something and the facial expression in the frame doesn't quite convey the acting in the panel doesn't quite convey what I'm saying, then I'll look at it and I'll change it a little bit because you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. That's something I do too. I letter Moros, and it's funny because actually I remember talking to Sean about this, about you, and specifically because he said, because it was one of the things when we were working over the process for the launch of my book, because we're making some changes, to keep it in a line with Short Fuse, a little more continuity and whatnot. And one of the things I hate lettering, like, to be honest, like I absolutely just don't like it at all. But I did do it for my book for a myriad of reasons. But one of those reasons was definitely that when I look at the pages, when I get those pages back, sometimes the characters look like they're saying something else, or the tone is a little bit different, or you know what I mean? And so
it needs to. There are things that need to be addressed.
Yeah. So I make adjustments. I call them like little audibles at the line or whatever. But yeah.
Well, if that's all I did, it wouldn't be such a problem. I really, sometimes I just look at it. It doesn't feel right, and it'll be from, the top of the page to maybe the middle of the next page. They're talking about something, and the way it's handled just doesn't feel right.
Right.
And I'll need to, space it out differently. And but most of it is, it's not. Most of it is just because there's a disconnect. If you don't draw the stuff yourself,
right,
it's never going to be exactly. Even if you hired, Neil Adams to do it,
right,
it's not going to. He's going to show. When your character is having second thoughts, he might be making him look, more heroic.
Right.
And so you have, as a writer, it's like, look, I'm not going to. I've already used all my changes. I'm not going to like push back on this. I need to, being the creative genius that I am.
Right.
I need to, go back in here and make it the scene just as good, but realize that the acting is slightly different, and I need to adjust what I'm saying.
No, for sure. I think that could be something really interesting that people that don't make comics might not, even understand, how that works exactly. I wonder, some of these guys that do everything themselves, I wonder how much they do that even after they draw it themselves. You know what I mean? Like it's still.
I would think in that case, like if I was, Hergé doing Tintin or whatnot, I would just keep redrawing the damn dog.
That's true.
Until I got the joke that I had intended.
That's fair.
Whereas with me, it's like there's only so many times I can, especially when I, was working before. I was working with Short Fuse, or I was working with guys who were using Google Translate to translate my words, because you'd hit a point where it would just make things worse by asking for changes because they just completely didn't get it. Especially if you're doing something that's comedic, and they're used to doing straight. They probably they don't even realize that they're working on a comedy.
Yeah, that's true. Do you have any of that stuff too? Because that stuff that should be dug out of archives. That should be some stuff.
I do. It's all on my NAS, my server, but it is. just saying the word server actually makes me sick. But I have everything on this network drive, and it takes quite a long. It's about 8 gigabytes.
Oh wow.
So it says it would take 2 weeks to copy Night Wasp back onto my computer.
Oh my god.
So if I don't do something soon, then Short Fuse is going to have to redraw all the next 4 Night Wasps very quickly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
you should probably get on that.
I should get on that.
Yeah, but no, that kind of stuff is stuff that I would want to, put out there for people to
I
see.
do have some of the old stuff. Stuff.
Because especially the duck, with him holding the duck, I really want to see what that would look like.
I also have drawings that I did, and I did the original version of the 4th cover, which I actually really, really like. But I decided, I like the continuity of having the same artists do every cover.
Right.
And so even though I liked my cover, which actually I'm gonna, if I can ever get it off my server, I'll send that to you, because that's a server that's not that cover is gonna not ever see the light of day.
Yeah.
Even though
it's cool stuff to like put out there for people. Something like I would do posts on social media every once in a while, and I would say like, look, this is the drawing I did of this character in like 2011, and then here's what it looks like now. And I think it's
so that when you get sued, you got proof.
Right, exactly. Yeah, totally. That's my protection. Absolutely. So wait, let me see. Oh, last thing I want to go over real quick. So
yes.
What's the other, what else is going on for you, man? Like, do you have any other stuff that you're working on? Any other endeavors? You said something about another screenplay or something, right?
Well, I'm always, I like comic books more than comic books and movies are very similar. It takes forever and ever for them to actually ever to see the light of day, from the time that you actually come up with your words.
Sure.
To the time that it's actually in the can. It could take a year or more.
Or more,
and
especially in the indie field, for sure.
So I've got stuff that I'm writing now that probably not going to see the light of day for like 2.5 years, but it's going to see the light of day. I'm sorry, but I got off point.
No. It's is any of that stuff? Does any of that stuff you think that
for the future? If I like to write comedy, but my favorite sort of comic books to read are the old EC comics. I mentioned the noir, that whole genre with their crime stuff. But I love, I'm a pacifist, but I love military comics, which is kind of hypocritical, I know. But I'm a big fan of history and the French and Indian War. So I wanted to do a graphic novel centered around Robert Rogers, who was a big hero for the French and Indian War.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I thought that would be a way, because I figured even if if I did it just simply, if I could sell it to Fort Ticonderoga and places they have, they'll sell it in the gift shop, because that places where he was.
Sure.
Just to make the printing back. I don't plan to make $1 million off it.
Right. No.
But I really love those old EC stories, and I thought I would just string it all together, starting when he's forced into the war all the way through. I mean, the guy was one of the most fascinating people in colonial American history.
No, that sounds awesome, man. Those would be some stuff to look forward to for sure. And of course, you've got a ton of Night Wasp backed up, right? I mean, like you've thought of this past 5 issues, if I'm understanding.
Yeah, I probably have. In my head right now, I have about 20 issues to go. I mean, because as the characters, as all the characters go through their lives, in the comic book, all of a sudden, it's like playing a chess game. Every move changes everything. Right. So all of a sudden, when this happens, they go, wait a minute. Now that he's poor, he's going to have to find he has to find ways to make money.
Right.
Being Night Wasp. What would he do? He's going to have to start doing commercials. He's going to have to start having the Microsoft logo on his costume, like a soccer player. Yes. And all of a sudden, it's like, and so the things that happen to him, all of a sudden, it's dynamic, and all of a sudden, it's like, I can do a whole issue where he's, a whole episode where he's, it's a conflict of interest because he's got a backer, major backer of Night Wasp and so and whatnot, or the supervillain has the same backer.
Ooh, conflict of interest for sure.
So one little throwaway line, or something that happens in one issue, all of a sudden, creates like a 6 or 7 issue storyline.
No, definitely. So there's plenty. So people,
Right.
there are
So
plenty.
there will never be an end to Night Wasp.
There will never
ever.
be an end. You heard it here.
Yep.
We're keeping this ship afloat. This Night Wasp ship.
Yes, I'm going to take my son out of school and put him in the garage and just have him preparing to take over for me.
Nice. That's awesome. Apprenticeship. Like a little.
Forget med school.
Forget med
Comic
school.
books. That's the way to go, kids. They'll make a fortune.
Exactly. Well, it's like Jack Kirby said, comics they'll break your heart. I believe is what King Kirby said one time. But Keith, it was awesome, man. I enjoyed saying
I respect you. I enjoyed talking to you, but that I have so much respect for Jack Kirby that I'm sad.
Maybe I should
I
have
don't want
said
it to
that.
break my heart.
I know, right? Maybe I should have said that. Well, let's end on a positive note. I was just kidding.
Comic books will be the first love of your life. How's that?
Yes, and make you very wealthy intellectually and financially as well.
Yes, you know what? And like I said before, even in geekdom, you can be a stud in the right circles.
Amen. And get laid at Comic-Cons.
Exactly. So, just know your marketplace.
Absolutely, brother.
Man,
Well, it was awesome to sit down and talk to you, man.
I really had a lot of fun.
Awesome. We'll have to do it again soon. And
Yes.
I'm going to put links to obviously the Kickstarter and you on social media so that you can get all these.
I'm going to send you that. I am going to try to send you that cover if it ever copies to my computer. If not, I'm going to commit suicide. So.
Oh well, this will be used as evidence in that case.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Okay. So they'll know it right here. Okay.
All right,
So
YouTubers.
I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
You're very welcome, man.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye.